So with men, I primarily probably see pelvic pain the most. Just like women, men can also have pelvic floor dysfunction. They also have a bladder as well. Oftentimes in men, they will have a diagnosis of maybe chronic non-bacterial prostatitis if they're somebody that has a lot of that urinary urgency, lower abdominal discomfort. It could even overlap with pain at the sit bones, pain at the penile tip. It could look like a lot of things, but with this feeling of a potential UTI-like sensation, there might be burning when they pee. All of these things comprise pelvic pain, even if individually we might not always call it pelvic pain. So for instance, if somebody's tip of the penis right there is painful, that counts as pelvic pain because that area of the body is communicated with by a specific nerve pathway that we would take a look at to address that. So anywhere that you have pain in the pelvis is considered pelvic pain. Men that are diagnosed with prostatitis, they also fit the diagnoses of IC, interstitial cystitis, or painful bladder syndrome. That all kind of is the very same criteria. So even though the symptoms can look like a lot of things, they might have 3 diagnoses as well that don't necessarily mean anything different from each other. So when you are coming in for a pelvic floor exam, what we're looking at is we're looking at the muscles in between the sit bones. I want to press into them. The muscles under your scrotum, these are all part of the more superficial or external pelvic floor muscles. And I want to know from you, how does it feel when we press into those muscles? Do I feel anything that's not moving on either side? Does that seem to correlate with any of your pain symptoms? And it can count if you're telling me you're somebody with back pain, and when I press into your pelvic floor, you actually feel that in your back. That's really important. The same way that we think of pain going from our back down our leg, it's pretty typical that most of us understand that as maybe what's called sciatica. So there's a nerve that hurts, it starts in your back, and then the pain spreads. Well, your pelvis can also have nerves that become irritated, and your sciatic can play a role, but then also some of the other smaller nerves that come out of here can also play a role. So what we are looking for when we do any kind of assessment for your pain is we want to mobilize muscles and nerve pathways, and I want to hear from you. How does it feel? And then after we address any of these areas that are painful, tender, or they're just not moving really efficiently, after we address that, what happens to your pain then? So every plan to address somebody's pain should be specific to exactly what they're feeling, and it's really hard to know that based on just a diagnosis that tells you where the pain is at. So pelvic pain is pretty general, but we might be looking at tailbone pain, sit bone pain. Sometimes people will say that they have pain in the scrotum or like one testicle. And a lot of the time, that type of pain also has to do with an irritated nerve pathway. So you can somewhat see on this model here, what these colors, these stripes signify are blood flow and also nerves that travel down into the testicles. So those nerves have to travel through this groin area. If you're somebody that has tightness in the groin or pain in the front of the hip, or maybe pinching in front of the hip, or maybe you have scar tissue pretty close to that area because of a previous surgery or something like that, there are plenty of reasons why a nerve that has to travel from the groin to somewhere else can produce pain at that end target area. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for in physical therapy. I want to look at your back. I want to look at your hips. I want to get an idea for if you have pain in this spot, where else is that communicating? Because a lot of the times we can kind of mobilize and free up those pathways that are irritated and change a couple patterns about the way you move and get you moving a lot better and without that pain and the fear of the pain. And then also in men, I will see men for leakage or urinary incontinence as well. More typically, that will go on after there's been some kind of medical treatment or procedure or surgery compared to women. But either way, men can still have incontinence. When the prostate is removed, the prostate gland, if this is the urethra where we pee from, and the prostate is kind of this little circular gland, the urethra travels right through the prostate. So depending on the status of the specific cancer and the technique used and the doctor and all kinds of other things, that person might still have part of their prostate, or they might have none of it. They might still have a little bit of effective compression from the prostate, or they really might not. So some people post-prostatectomy are missing some of the compression that belongs around the urethra. That's going to be one thing that increases demand on the pelvic floor. If there's pain due to scar tissue and other things related to the surgery or related to other cancer treatments potentially, that can affect tightness of the pelvic floor. That can end up translating into pelvic pain as well. So these issues can be complex. They can have layers to them. One thing can become another if we don't pay attention to it and learn about it and fix it as we're finding out that we have it. So just like women, men can also have pretty complex pain issues, and doing a really good interview at the beginning of the evaluation gives you some great info, and then also me being able to take a look at all these areas gives us a lot of info. Now, because pain might start in the back, or it might be purely in the pelvis, or it might kind of involve like the hips and the pelvic floor, we don't always have all the answers on the first day. On the first day, we're gonna try and look at what are the couple things where we might get the most bang for our buck, the most information, but assessment really goes on through the whole treatment as we learn more and more about how to individually address your problems.